Hi, welcome everyone. We'll start in just a minute. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat, that would be lovely. Just your name, where you teach, or what your role is, your discipline. Um, Folks are chiming in already, so that's wonderful.
Julie, can you clear the Q&A, please?
I'm trying. I think I might have to be the host to do it.
Wonderful. So Ohio, CSU Bakersfield, FSU, Missouri Baptist University. Wonderful. Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's so cool to see the range of folks. I know we had some international interest as well. Cerritos College, wonderful. Winnipeg, Canada. All right. So welcome everyone. I'm Anna Mills, and welcome to Peer and AI Review plus Reflection, the PAIR project. And this webinar is an invitation to you to engage with our human-centered, research-based approach. And so we are a collaboration between 8 public colleges and universities supported by the California Education Learning Lab. And today I'm going to be presenting. I teach at College of Marin. We also have Julie Gamberg from Glendale Community College, Marit MacArthur from the University of California at Davis, Carl Whithouse, University of California, Davis, and Lisa Sperber, University of California at Davis. We're so glad you're here. Our purpose is really just to share practices that any educator who teaches with writing can try, and we want to invite your input and participation. So I think I've already invited folks to share your name, where you work, your discipline in the chat, and I see that still the chat is hopping with that. We love that. Feel free to use the chat for ideas, discussion, comments throughout. We welcome your social presence. And for questions that you do want the presenters to answer, we just would invite you to use the Q&A feature, which is that discussion icon in the menu bar. And that brings it to our attention. We may answer it by typing in the moment, or we may hold that for a live answer later on, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So thanks so much, and I'm gonna let Carl tell you the plan for today.
Excellent. Welcome. So we're super excited for folks to be here. So what we're going to do for the next 45 minutes or so is we're going to tell you a little bit about the PAIR project. We're going to start off by giving you our sense of philosophy, the importance of including the human in the loop, the instructor and other students, working around feedback with AI in college writing courses. We're going to dive into some of the details of the PAIR project, going over readings from 4 different areas that include concerns about ethics, ranging from environmental impacts to linguistic justice, go into some of the details of how we provide feedback, and then this really important thing of the plus, the reflections, having students develop a metacognitive model that helps them think about feedback from multiple places. We'll dive in and talk about the 2 AI feedback prompts that we have tested and developed that sort of form the basis of what will ultimately become the PAIR AI prompt library for getting feedback. And then we will talk about how to customize AI feedback in terms of a reflection assignment and how to manage the work that comes as an instructor, integrating PAIR into classroom activities and into learning management systems. And then we also have time for a Q&A. The last 15 minutes or so will definitely be questions that have either been placed in the Q&A during the session are questions that are addressed right at the end. We do have access to the slides and also all the materials we're referencing. Julia is going to drop those links in the into the chat so that folks can go ahead and grab those. And the last sort of thing that I want to say is I really want to emphasize the basis of PAIRR in terms of the reflection, that is developing metacognitive models for students who are working with AI tools. We're recognizing that AI technology is here. It's going to be impacting the ways in which we teach. We don't think we can return to only blue books. We have to figure out how students have agency, how they develop and use it effectively. And so we built the PAIRR model. We'll talk to you a little bit about that history, but it's really this idea of making students critical users of AI tools, systems, that is at the center of what PAIRR is done. Or what PAIRR does. We do also want to recognize that if AI technologies are implemented in really narrow fashions where they're promising students just to produce beautiful text, or there these really slick ed tech programs that keep the teachers out of the loop, don't draw on teaching expertise. Studies have shown that these actually deepen educational divides, which is part of what the project faculty members want to make sure we avoid with the PAIRR model. And then finally, PAIRR as a philosophy and then really as a practice emphasizes students being engaged in assessing how they're developing their writing processes, their knowledge about writing, as well as the strength of their final products, but also that they have a critical engagement with both peer feedback and AI feedback, deciding what to include and what not to include. And this, we believe, makes them stronger and better writers overall. I'm going to turn it over to Mart, who's going to talk a little bit more about the PAIRR model and how that helps us build this metacognitive approach to writing.
Thanks, Carl. So you might be wondering, what do we actually do with PAIRR? You know what it stands for now, Peer and AI Review plus Reflection. The core of it is pretty simple, and a lot of it you probably do already if you teach writing. So students write a rough draft of a writing assignment. They go through peer review, and we do have resources to support that if you're not happy with the way you do peer review now. And then after they get the peer review feedback, they get feedback from a chatbot. The way they do that is they use one of our PAIRR prompts for feedback and include the assignment description and the rubric or criteria used for that assignment, sometimes for grading, sometimes not. And then before they revise, they reflect, they compare. They're like, okay, what do I agree with? What do I disagree with? What advice do I want to take? Why? Does it suit my audience, my purpose, my voice? And then they revise. So that reflection piece is really important. And that's the basic sequence, right? So we're just adding in AI review and then reflection on peer and AI review before they revise. So why combine peer and AI review with reflection? Why combine them at all? Okay, so a couple reasons. Educational equity works in two ways here. AI can provide more opportunities for feedback. A lot of teachers are overextended, have too many students, little time. So students can benefit from that additional writing support. And we do need to boost AI literacy for all, rather than leave, some behind who are going to enter the workplace with no idea how to collaborate effectively with and appropriately with AI. On the other hand, of course, writing is social and rhetorical. It's human communication. We need human readers, and we are usually writing for human readers. And of course, relationships matter because relationships with teachers and peers impact engagement, motivation, and sense of belonging, which are, of course, correlated with success and retention. So you can't just have an AI teacher, AI tutor, right? And then the metacognition element, again, is really important. Students critically reflect on AI and peer feedback rather than just accepting it. And reflection, of course, in all sorts of areas, helps them consolidate tacit knowledge for transfer to other contexts. And lastly, we believe that PAIRR can really support linguistic justice and equity. Students learn to value their own voices and to critically reflect on AI feedback, not just accept it like an inline suggestion for Grammarly, like, okay, Grammarly says I should do it, so yes, and move on. They don't do that with PAIRR. And I will pass it on to Lisa.
You're muted, Lisa. No worries.
Somebody had to do it. Okay. Hi, everyone again. So I'm going to briefly review key findings from our first quite large pilot of PAIRR. And we have updated all of our materials for the current version of PAIRR, for example, including a focus on language justice equity and on continued prompting. But I'd like to give you a basic idea of how students responded to the PAIRR framework. For the full research findings, let me just look at the slide itself. Please check out our article in the current edition of Computers and Composition, current issue. I've also included a brief article written for instructors and students and a full set of research slides that we presented at SEAS this year. So we collected data from 654 students at UC Davis in 2023-24. This included around standard size writing classes, around 10 different types of writing classes, and 3 large STEM courses. And we analyzed a subset of students' written reflections, interviews, and surveys. You could do the next slide. So one of our significant findings is that the majority of students preferred receiving a combination of peer and AI feedback together. You can see a sizable minority, 35.7%, preferred peer feedback alone, and I'll sort of return to that a bit. And importantly, only 6.7% preferred AI feedback alone. As Marit talked about, AI is not a replacement for human feedback. Students still really want human feedback. Next. So key findings. Peer and AI feedback were often similar and reinforced each other. 75% of students noted this in their reflections. And the similarity between peer feedback and AI feedback really helped them to trust both sets of feedback. And when AI and peer feedback differed, the perspectives could be complementary, for example, on different aspects of students' writing. For example, their peers responding as readers, AI commenting on structural issues, and they found that helpful. Evaluating AI feedback also fostered student agency and critical AI literacy, as Marit was gesturing towards, like, for example, do I agree with this feedback? Does it align with my purpose? Importantly, even among students who found AI feedback very useful, most students valued human feedback more. The vast majority valued human feedback more. AI is really supplemental. But AI feedback did have significant advantages. It included, the feedback is rubric driven and often includes, especially we instructed it in this version, concrete revision strategies. For example, work on integrating sources using these types of introductory lead-in phrases. And finally, AI offers both positive and critical feedback, which peers are often shy to offer critical feedback. And last slide. So this slide represents a more preliminary finding with a smaller data set, but we felt these findings were really important. So we gave students a prompt to use with AI to receive initial feedback, but we also gave them the option to continue to ask questions, to continue that feedback conversation. And among students who continued the conversation, an even larger proportion had a preference for AI and peer feedback together. We interpret that, we believe that suggests that those continued AI conversations, the continued questions, produces more useful feedback, which makes sense. And that's something we'll be studying more in this next version. So now I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who will introduce us to the new AI literacy curriculum we developed for students.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, all. Another important part of the PAIRR model is that students do some essential reading before they jump into the human peer, and AI writing feedback. And Editing and curation was really key here, as we do recognize the challenges of adding readings to our courses across the curriculum. So we're just going to quickly take you through the required readings include basic information about what AI is and approaches to using it, which you can see on this slide, as well as a review of ethical considerations. We also include a few optional discussion questions, so you can see those as well on the slide, for students for each required reading, and you have this in your PAIRR packet. In another set of readings, we look at linguistic justice and equity, which is a new concept to most of our students, and we do that through some readings and through some videos. We also look in another set of readings at how and why AI perpetuates bias and stereotypes. And then finally, we look at the environmental impact of AI use. And for each of the required readings, there's discussion questions, and then there's optional readings as well. So a focus of PAIRR in this iteration is also linguistic justice and equity. And we are framing linguistic justice and equity, or language equity, as an acknowledgement of linguistic bias in education. So the idea that standard English is the only acceptable academic voice is what we're challenging. And we address this in our PAIRR feedback prompts, in addition to in the readings that we showed you. And we will show you those prompts shortly, and I will be showing them to you in a minute. And we address them by asking AI to consider and share with students possible reader perspectives on their writing, and also to consider diversity within that readership, readers from a wide variety of cultural and linguistic backgrounds. We also ask the AI to focus on the effectiveness of the students' rhetorical choices rather than the students' adherence to standard academic English. So to push that work a bit further, we developed a rubric to use with the PAIRR prompt that asks the AI to consider 5 categories when giving feedback. And this common rubric is available. You're welcome to use it if you'd like, but it's optional for instructors engaging with PAIRR this year in the project. And the rubric looks at asks the AI to look at, is the student writing responsive to the assigned task? Did it demonstrate an understanding of the context and purpose for writing? Is the content shaping the work relevant and appropriate to the subject, compelling and developed? Is the source material, including lived experience, appropriate to the genre and used skillfully to develop, support, and connect ideas? Has the student made structural choices to convey meaning and create a coherent journey for readers around clear central points? And does the writer draw the reader in with a distinct voice and style while communicating clearly, which may include various Englishes or linguistic structures? And does the student show an awareness of academic convention, whether using or subverting it? Is there attention to proofreading? And is there an awareness of reader and reader understanding? So that's kind of the common rubric and what it frames. And now Anna is going to talk about and share with you our prompts.
Yeah, so we initially thought that we were designing one feedback prompt to rule them all, sort of, with the idea that we would have consistency for our research project, that all of the instructors in our project would be using this same feedback prompt. And we did spend, the last 3 months intensively writing prompts and testing them. We reflected and rated over 200 examples of feedback with over 20 prompts. And we learned a lot in this process. We learned that we may need different prompts for different kinds of classes, assignments, and pedagogical approaches. And that we're coming to you today with sort of 2 prompts that we've tested and that we really see value in. And we thought it actually would be more interesting for you as well to sort of decide what you think about the different kinds of feedback you're seeing from these different prompt approaches. And so we want to invite your kind of input and testing of those. Of course, you're also welcome to adapt and edit either of those prompts. And maybe they would be inspiration for how you want to prompt, what kind of feedback you want the AI to give. So prompt number 1, we wrote this spring, and it is based on the original PAIRR prompt from the research that the Davis researchers did. But it also incorporates some input from our Linguistic Justice and Equity consultants, Michelle Gonzalez and Keisha Quesada Turner, our reading on feedback practices, and some research that we did into evidence-based prompt engineering practices like chain of thought prompting. So how do you better control what you're getting out of the AI system, and test for it? And you can see the full text of this prompt in the PAIRR packet that you have. But highlights are that it asks the AI to give a description, about a short paragraph each, about 2 strengths and 2 considerations for revision in the draft. And it's supposed to choose those and prioritize those according to the assignment and the rubric criteria. And it's also supposed to quote from the student draft to support each one. And that's been one surprise as we work with AI feedback, that it really is able to be quite specific about material from the student drafts and quote accurately from them. And the other feature is, I think, as Julie mentioned, there's a real emphasis on what readers of different backgrounds, including culturally marginalized backgrounds, might experience, wonder about, or need in order to engage better with the students' ideas. So how do you reach your readers? And what might they need from you as a writer? And we really emphasize that in the prompt as a way to focus on the intrinsic meaning of writing as human communication. And so there's this paradoxical way that we hope that the AI feedback can draw the students' attention back to what they want to say to their human readers, and show that the purpose of the writing, that it's not just about the polished product. The prompt also includes we try to draw a really clear line to support student agency and decision making in the writing process. So this is not feedback that tells them what to say or how to reword or even what point to make. Hopefully, through the instructions and through our testing, we've seen this works pretty well. We asked the AI to facilitate revision by asking questions that help the students discover their own solutions. So not telling them how to fix it. And over to Julie.
So this is some sample feedback from the AI using this prompt that we created. And this was a response to a student research paper on AI. The student wrote a compelling paper with a strong voice about the complexities of ownership of AI-related work. And because this particular paper was meditative in tone, and it involved register shifts, right? So like moving in and out of academic language. Some of this language, justice and equity, kind of pedagogy that we're talking about, this paper used. And the student did this to kind of fully contemplate these tricky ideas and connect with the reader. So we were really interested to see what the AI would suggest in terms of improvement for this paper. And we were really glad to see that the prompt did respect the voice of the student and moved into a place where we agreed the essay could use some focus and clarity. So I'll read actually just until the bolded part. Your draft often surfaces counter-arguments, e.g. others which make more sense to give the ownership of AI works to are the following, but tends to shift between perspectives rather than fully unpacking the implications of each stance. Readers may appreciate more explicit engagement with these tensions. For example, what are the real-world impacts, positive or negative, of allowing prompters or companies or no one to claim copyright? What complexities are missing from the creative input of a prompter, and how might that compare to creative labor in more traditional media? So we saw that the AI really seemed to respect the voice of the student and get into feedback around what the student was going for, was looking at.
Hi, I'm back. So the second pair feedback prompt is more bare bones. It's more concise and gives a few more rubric-based suggestions for revision than one, while still describing strengths. And just a little bit of background about this one. So this group led by Stice and so on at UC Irvine developed an AI feedback prompt and tested it with 200 samples of AI feedback and 200 samples of human feedback. And that's what we at UC Davis based our original PAIRR prompt on. We didn't use it verbatim. We made some changes, but we used it in 10 writing courses, that the study that Lisa was talking about earlier. And in that computers and composition piece, we reported our findings when we studied students' reflections on the AI feedback, but we did not evaluate the AI feedback itself. So that's what we've been starting to do. Prompt 2 incorporates some themes of prompt 1 to discourage chatbots from judging students' voices or style, offer more encouragement and further conversation, and also illustrate the feedback by quoting from the draft. So because this one is a little shorter, I can show you most of it, but not all of it, because the format for the feedback is really important, so you want to look at the whole thing. But so this is how it reads. I'm a student in a insert name of your course working on an assignment. Pretend you're a supportive peer reviewer who will review my draft based on the assignment and rubric I provide. And by the way, the role you assign to AI does matter. There are different results that James Purdy is investigating from Duquesne University about what if you call it a coach? What if you call it an instructor? What if you call it peer review? Do not rewrite my paper for me. And that was an important addition, right? Or judge my voice or style. Please provide clear, detailed, specific, and constructive feedback. Be precise and honest when identifying strengths and areas for improvement. Quote from the draft to illustrate each piece of feedback you offer, and then you give it your assignment description, you give it your rubric, you give it the draft. So it's the same process for both prompts, so that it's really inflected by what you want them to focus on in terms of the assignment description and the rubric. And one last point I make is that, because these are probabilistic models, it is good to iterate. Sometimes it'll pick up on an issue in your draft, and sometimes it'll just completely overlook it, and you're like, wait, what happened? Well, because it's probabilistic.
So we want to hopefully invite your active participation now by sharing with you examples of the different feedback you get from prompt 1 and prompt 2 in response to two short sample essays. And this is part of the packet, but I think Julie just put it in the chat. So we took these sample essays partly to make them short and simple so you could skim them and evaluate quickly. They come from the ASAP 2.0 data set. They're from 10th grade writers, so they are high school essays. And we just took the rubric from that data set of standardized test writing. We're not endorsing that particularly, but we're showing you what the feedback looks like with that rubric. We actually, as Marit said, the rubric and the assignment matters a lot to the kind of feedback you get. And so we found in testing that we actually wanted to take out the rubric criteria about errors in grammar, usage, and mechanics, because the feedback we were getting was so prescriptive with that in a way that seemed judgmental. So we want to just invite you to take 5 minutes to read these. So they look like they're going to look like this. You can scroll down, you can see prompt number 1 feedback with the 2 strengths. If you want, in the packet, you can go up and see the original essay itself, essay 1, sample student essay, and essay 2 down here. And so after you take the 5 minutes to kind of look at that, and you're welcome to comment directly on the doc if you want, but we hope that you will then share your impressions, your comments on this Mentimeter poll. So it first will ask you some questions, just like, what did you think? Would you use prompt 1 or prompt 2 based on that? Would you adapt the prompts? And then it's open-ended on the next slide. So we're just very excited to see what you think of the style of that feedback, the two contrasting feedback styles. So let us know if you have questions about accessing any of this. And I'll be showing that Mentimeter poll as the comments and responses come in. So it'll be really interesting to see. So again, the link to those contrasting feedback examples is in the chat. And you can also look at the sample essay to evaluate them. And we want to know what you think in the poll after that. So, and I can give the direct link as well to that, to the section that has the samples. So that's that direct link. So yeah, Lisa King, I just put the link in that should take you directly to those sample contrasting essays. Let me put that again. Great. Right, and then, okay, so maybe the first link we shared didn't go directly, but this one that I just shared should take you directly to those sample essays. You can also navigate, this is our packet, and if you see the document tabs, if you don't see the document tabs, just click on this table of contents here on the side, and you will see all our materials. Down toward the bottom, you see the sample student writing and sample feedback tabs. So let's hoping folks are finding that. If you're not, just put it in the chat, and we will help. So yeah, if you want to take a couple of minutes to look at those and then go to the Mentimeter poll to give your reactions. Oops, sorry. Just put the Mentimeter poll in the chat again. Yeah, so thanks. Yeah, sorry about that. The PlayLab links you don't need to worry about right now. That's just for later for your own experimentation. So right now we are looking at the 2 sample bits of feedback, which I will put the direct link again in there. And then once you've looked at those, we hope you'll give us your Mentimeter poll reactions, which looks like this. And we will go from there. But let us know if you're still lost, and we apologize for any complexity. So I'm going to start showing those poll results just as they come in. Guess that's not entirely scientific because it might influence you, but I'm always curious to see the poll results right away. So once you've put in your impressions on here, then you can go on to that next question, which is open-ended for your comments, impressions of the feedback. We'd love to know, like, what more would you want the feedback to do? What did you see in there that you didn't want it to do? I think there was a comment in the chat that it can be problematic to tell chatbots not to do things. Sometimes they do them anyway. And that's true, as Marit said, they are probabilistic, and there's some randomness and there's some squirreliness, and you don't get entire consistency. And that's part of the AI literacy reflection, I think, for the students, is that we want to point those moments out and we want students to notice them. And so we also tested and retested to try to get better instruction following, and we were able to get better instruction following in the course of our testing. That can depend very much on the model you're using. So we've kind of worked with that, but where the AI feedback goes in strange directions is a moment to remember that it's a bot and that it works in strange ways and that we should keep that skeptical distance from it. Very interesting. Cool. Okay, so folks are responding. There's a lot of interest in modifying the prompts. So that's actually, a practice of faculty AI literacy, right? It's exciting, that's encouraging that you want to dive in and do your own versions and have that feedback reflect what your vision would be. And that's part of our faculty development that we're doing in the course of the PAIRR project as well. Okay, waiting for time. So I'm going to peek at the open-ended answers. Oh, yay, folks are writing all kinds of stuff. This is very exciting. So that's someone saying the feedback from prompt 2 was more actionable. And more direct and less confusing in prompt 2. Interesting. Someone saying prompt 2 was better structured. Students might be confused by the directions in sample 1. Should there be something in the prompt that allows the AI to not have an answer, or what stumped it? I love that. We do have something in prompt 1 about uncertainty and allowing for uncertainty. Is there a way to add evaluation of use of sources? Yes, absolutely. That would be in the assignment or the rubric that you're adding to the prompt. Someone's saying they're very impressed by the quality of the AI feedback. Another vote for feedback 2 being more specific. The tone of prompt 1 is warmer and seems less judgmental of the writer as a person. That's interesting. Prompt 1 seemed more contextualized, reader focused, and attentive to linguistic justice. Someone likes the conclusions in both. Someone saying they would adjust for secondary school environment. Very interesting. Okay, and loving the language diversity parts. They like prompt 2 better, but they like the feedback from prompt 1 better. They like the simplicity of prompt 2. Super interesting. And let's go back for a second to see the results here. That's so great that there's so much energy for modifying the prompts. 28 folks. 22 saying you could see yourself recommending or assigning one of them. Definitely a preference for prompt 2 feedback overall, but still 9 folks preferring prompt 1. One person having concerns and would do this differently or not at all, and definitely respect that, and I'm interested, and I hope they put more in the comments about that. So this is really wonderful, beginning to a discussion, and we hope you'll continue this kind of reflection and sharing and contribution to our project and our discussion. And let's see, I'm gonna try to get out of this, back to the presentation. So we will leave time at the end for a little more of that, but I want to make sure that we get to cover all of the other aspects of PAIRR besides the prompts and the AI feedback themselves. So Carl will talk about how we scaffold the follow-up chat for students.
Awesome. So I have the challenge of following the interactive portion with a little bit more talking about PAIRR and some of the main models around reflecting on the peer and the AI feedback, and also reflecting on the revision process. So one of the things that we've built into the materials for PAIRR is to emphasize the importance of follow-up chat, what Lisa was talking about earlier, as continuing the conversation, what you'll see in some of the literature in the field as iterative prompting, where there's feedback that's provided from the AI, but then students engage in a continued conversation with the AI about like changes that it would suggest, or it's made feedback, they ask for clarification. Part of the reason we're interested in this is the pilot study that we did at UC Davis. We noted that the students who got the most out of it, both out of peer and AI feedback, engaged in these iterative conversations with the AI. And so now that we're expanding PAIRR to 8 different campuses in California, we're trying to study how iterative prompting, how continued conversation works. We really found it a valuable thing in the pilot, but we didn't do enough with it, and we want to try to do more. And it's definitely incorporated into the PAIRR model that we have currently. Go ahead on to the next slide. Now, there's 2 really important parts of the reflective element. One is an immediate reflection that students are doing on their peers' feedback and the chatbot's feedback. And we have questions on this slide and the next slide that are really focused on thinking about that feedback and attending to the different elements within it, and then asking about, so 1, literally what is being said, and then 2, what insights or perspectives on the writing did you gain from the peer and from the chatbot? What advice did it tell you? Naming these things, and then given the feedback that you receive, what do you think you might do? So beginning to sketch sometimes what I call a revision plan for students, but there's really sort of 5 questions that make the students engage with the feedback that they've gotten from the peers and the feedback that they're getting from the AI. So it becomes, how do you use this? What are your plans for revising? And then going on to the next slide, and this is a thing that happens later in the semester, in the quarter, in the term, after the students have finished their revisions on the papers, they reflect on the revisions that they made and think about whether those came from peer review, from AI feedback, from a combination. It's interesting, we've found there are ways in which students will get very different types of feedback from AI and peers, but they have to make a choice about what they've included. So this final reflection is important. Sometimes even opposing types of advice end up being complementary and useful for students in the end, but they're being able to think about that is an important element. There had been a note in the chat earlier about stress testing in marketing situations with AI. This is sort of the same model, but it's the individual student having agency, deciding what they've used and then reflecting on that becomes important. And we have that scaffolding material around assignments. I'm going to pass it on to
Yeah. So there was just a question in the chat of how do you use this? Do we have custom bots? And there are actually a couple ways you can use it. You can use those prompts that we have in the packet with any chatbot. And you can also use them. We've tried to make that even easier for testing by creating 2 custom bots. And I think Julie's going to put the links in the chat. They're in the slides. So they're just prompt 1 and prompt 2, bot 1 and bot 2. And they prompt you to insert your assignment and your rubric and your draft. So you just have to kind of prepare your assignment instructions. You might want to edit out anything that's, really student directed and not useful to a chatbot. And we have found that, if you have a 2-dimensional rubric with many elements, it might make sense to just put the, criteria for excellence along each point into the chatbot, so to keep it a little simpler. But really, it's copying and pasting and using that with any chatbot or with our custom bots or with MyEssayFeedback, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I think, oh,
Yeah.
I apologize.
No,
Mara,
that's
sorry.
fine. Yeah, so there were just some questions about this in the chat. Our approach, PAIRR, is platform agnostic. You can use it with any platform, with any chatbot, which is a really important point. We're not selling a product. We are promoting an open educational resource idea, which we've tested and think works. So we do recommend checking which language model your chatbot's running and choosing the most sophisticated option, like Claude Sonnet 4, Opus 4, if you're using that, ChatGPT 4.1, 4.5, or O3. So what you do is just copy whichever prompt you want to test. And I emphasize test rather than use, because you really need to see what results you get and whether you like it. Insert your assignment instructions in rubric in the sections for those at the end of the feedback prompt, and then upload the draft. So we are experimenting with MyEssayFeedback to make the logistics easier and data collection easier for us. It protects privacy, doesn't collect any student information. It also syncs up with the learning management system, Canvas for most of us, for the gradebook in there, and it builds in reflection. So it's just kind of efficient and gives the students less logistical stuff to deal with. And then we can see their conversations too. So through MyEssayFeedback, you can give your students automatic credit in the gradebook for uploading a draft, chatting back to the feedback at least twice, and then writing a reflection. And teachers can decide how much they're able to engage and comment. If you want to look at it and mark it yourself, you can, or you can just give them automatic credit. So the app facilitates critical reflection on the AI feedback, whereas a chatbot just in the open, in the wild, just isn't going to ask you to reflect. So just a little about MyEssayFeedback, which we are experimenting with as part of this Learning Lab grant. It's a FERPA compliant platform that's been used a lot in 10 states and 5 countries. It was created by Eric Keene, who's here in the webinar, and he taught math and music at Western Washington University for a long time. He also developed LibreText's OER homework platform, Adapt, and he got a lot of feedback, volunteer feedback from our own Anna Mills from College of Marin, on just trying to develop this to be as supportive as possible and as useful as possible for writing instructors and their students. And it does use ChatGPT 4.1, but uses the API through Microsoft Azure, which, because they mostly work with businesses, has stronger privacy protections, which we really appreciate.
And so if you're interested in trying MyEssayFeedback, it is free for instructors to experiment with. You can sign up with your email. There's a pretty simple form, and Eric Keene is very responsive about welcoming you and support questions. You can also apply to pilot with students for a semester for free. And that is just, the first, I think, 100 instructors. It's not an arduous application. And then after that, the cost is $12 a student per semester to cover costs, which is much, much less than the commercial chatbots are charging for student use and educational use. It is a not-for-profit project. And, I got involved as a volunteer kind of pedagogical advisor because, this was a chance to have teachers shape the ed tech and really focus on our vision for AI integration. And in the Mentimeter, we do have, we would love to know more from you, and you've been saying in the chat, but what other kinds of resources from us would be useful to you going forward? What other kinds of offerings from the PAIRR project to include kind of this larger community of educators who are trying related approaches? So if you want to use the arrow key to go to that slide in the Mentimeter, we would really welcome, or just put it in the chat would be fine too. But we would really welcome that input. It's the same Mentimeter. And now over to Julie for questions.
So first of all, thank you so much for being here. That's what we have for you formally. We are loving the chat. Such great resources, questions, ideas, modifications. And we would love to hear from you about what you're doing around AI and feedback, resources you've found. If you do continue using or modifying either pair prompt, we want to hear about it. So you have our packet of materials and it's open for commenting. Please feel welcome to leave comments. We would really love to hear your ideas. And we also have a Padlet with a few categories. You can click the plus sign below any category and share your thoughts in text, a video, attachments, links. So in the first category, if you have any resources you'd like to share, just click that plus button. And if you'll kind of hover over it, and then you can share a resource. In the second category, you can share your experience trying either of the prompts, or if you modify a prompt and you'd like community feedback, this is a great place. We gave each other so much feedback on prompt iterations. So once you go down that rabbit hole, you will be you'll really, I think, enjoy getting and giving feedback on your prompt iterations. And then if you have any questions, not just for pair us presenters, but other pair faculty using this intervention, but also for each other. So we would love to have this be an ongoing conversation after today. But for now, we want to give a few minutes to answer some of the questions that you posted in the Q&A and have a little space for a little conversation now.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to, yeah, great.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have questions that haven't been answered yet, please feel free to continue posting them in the Q&A. Right now, it's on the bottom part of the Zoom screen. So I wanted to look at one question that David McHugh asked. And Julie, I was hoping you could speak to this. It was about how to preserve student voice.
Yeah,
In
so I
this
didn't see
process.
it. Will you read it aloud?
Yeah, I'm looking for it because I think we.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Can you say more about how to preserve, more about how to structure things to help preserve student voice? Seeing more submissions that all sound the same. Yeah, that's a big question. Actually, I think we all could say something about it. I think there's how we give an assignment, what we use AI for. There's so many different components to it. I think definitely having students read a little bit about linguistic justice is really helpful because they can start to see kind of what these issues are about linguistic bias and this academic voice that we previously kind of have often really privileged and students have strived for. They can see maybe the challenges in diluting their own voice. So I think that's one way. And then I think things flatten, right, as students use a lot of AI. Lisa, were you going to say something as well?
I wanted to, I know Marit's been thinking about this too. Did you want to add on?
Oh, I just put something in the chat. I think it's really important to introduce and reinforce, like in lots of different ways, readings, discussion of the readings, assignment descriptions, rubrics, feedback prompts. Like, yeah, they needed a lot to
Yeah.
get the message.
And there's a lot of things that are a little bit outside of PAIRR, but I think that really help lots of assignments, AI pedagogy assignments, like having students, something that's been really successful in my own comp courses is having students pick something that they're very, very expert on in their own lives, like whatever it be, like skateboarding, and then ask a question, have ChatGPT write an essay about that. And I think they're able to really immediately see not only that it doesn't have the nuance they would like, but they are able to see voice, I think, a little more closely when it's something they really care about. And I think that really helps. But honoring, and then the feedback we give students that really honor their voice as well, I think helps encourage that cycle.
Thank you so much. So another question from an anonymous participant. I like the idea of student, and this I'm thinking maybe Anna can answer. I like the idea of students being able to use any LLM for this, but I also wonder if it would provide enough guardrails, for lack of a better word. In other words, even with the great prompt you have, I think students could continue the conversation and ask the bot to revise for them. So I think a custom bot or MyEssayFeedback might be better because you could establish guardrails. And I'm gonna send it to Anna, but I'll say one thing in response, which is students can already do this whole thing in an AI bot if they want to. So I'm not sure that the process itself encourages that, but the fact that AI is out there creates this whole thing, and that's what all of these quandaries for us, for students, and that's why we believe we need to teach AI literacy. Anna?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that that in my essay feedback, it's built in that the instructor can just see the student's whole interaction with the chatbot. And we can be the ones, giving them credit or not for that, commenting on that. So, it is kind of, there's a human in the loop, there's a teacher in the loop automatically with that platform. Um, if you're doing it with a chatbot, you can ask them for chat transcripts. But of course, they could continue the chat after the chat transcript, yes, or in a different chat session, right? So we're not, preventing them, as Lisa said, from using chatbots in other ways. But it is true that MyEssayFeedback or a dedicated app can make it sort of transparent, involve the teacher kind of intrinsically in the process in a way that supports more guardrails.
Thank you very much. And then there's two questions that I think are related to each other. Becky Rudd asks, how would you weave this into a composition course? And Matthew, I don't know where the question is, but I noted it, asked if students feel overwhelmed by the number of steps. So I wanted to start giving a stab at this and then invite any of the other presenters to. So in terms of weaving this into a composition course, I think, as Marit mentioned, it's pretty intuitive to add AI feedback to peer review. If for writing teachers who are already incorporating peer review, I think just adding that as part of the process is not very complicated. If instructors are not yet doing peer review, then that's something to think about and figure out. And that I can repost it, but there's a 2-page little article I wrote for instructors and students coming out in bad ideas about AI in writing that might be useful guidelines for that, including how to incorporate best practices in peer review. Students did feel overwhelmed by the number of steps in our original study. A faculty described it as like filling out a tax form. But we've been working on streamlining that. That is one of the reasons we decided to partner with MyEssayFeedback, is to have a lot of the process built into a bot. But also the Playbot that Anna developed does have some of it built in because the prompts are built in. Anna, do you want to comment on how to integrate this as well?
Yeah, so I will have an assignment in Canvas that the students go into that brings up my essay feedback and prompts them to go through the steps in this process, to chat back to the feedback, to write a reflection. And I'm assigning that after I've assigned peer review in Canvas, and it's automatically sending credit for participation back to the Canvas gradebook. So this is one more process assignment in my mind. And they understand that there are a lot of process assignments, including, I require them to visit a tutor as well. And we do the peer review and all the other process assignments. So it fits into that teaching the writing process model. And even if you don't have a lot of time to teach process, this is flexible on time because of that automatic credit. I feel like when I go in to look at what interaction they've had with the chatbot, I can be motivated really by curiosity and a desire to kind of speak, be part of that conversation, rather than, spending a lot of time evaluating what they've done. Yeah.
Sorry,
A lot of questions are coming in the chat too.
no, it's that I'm responding. I'm like writing
You're doing great.
answers and I'm like all in that. We just have a couple minutes left. Anybody else on the team see one that has anyone used the PAIRR how about for Anna, can you see the interaction with PlayLab happening on PlayLab 1? With PlayLab AI happening?
No, PlayLab doesn't have that integration with an LMS or sort of set up for a class. You can ask them to share a chat transcript as you would with any chatbot, but it's not integrated with a classroom environment in that way.
Thank you. I'm going to answer one of the other, Becky, has anyone used the PAIRR process and all the articles as the focus for an entire class? So the readings that we made, if you look in the packet and see the full list of readings, we included required ones and optional ones so that faculty, especially those teaching first-year comp who may have more space in their classes, could really develop, a whole class around this. So that's not how our original course thing was modeled, but I certainly think AI literacy could be a substantial portion of the class, and integrating PAIRR could be a substantial portion of that, depending on how much space you let it take up. So it's 2:00. I think we discussed if people would like to stay on, we could stay on for an extra 10 minutes. So does Anna, would you like to sort of do a formal closure of this, or Julie, and then we can stay on for folks who want to?
Sure. I mean, I think we just want to celebrate all the discussion that's been happening in the chat and invite you. Like, we really want to have a vibrant community that can extend on the Padlet and also on social media. If you post something on the Padlet, you could also post on LinkedIn and tag us. This is, an ongoing, evolving conversation as AI changes, as we figure out approaches. We'll be sharing our research, but we'll also be inviting conversation along the way. And this has been really exciting. So I want to thank you for being part of that. And with that said, we can continue the conversation with anyone who wants to stay. If you need to go, feel free. But
Great. And I also wanted to bring your attention again to the packet that we made. This is our goodie bag for today's webinar, and it includes the readings, all the everything. Anna, I'm wondering, we have fewer people. I think, should we have people?
Should we maybe take on like one more question or so from the Q&A, and then we can then maybe unmute for the last couple minutes? If there was a big one, what do you think?
I was thinking we could maybe go directly. I think we've done that. I think we're good for maybe taking it. So if anybody has questions that haven't been answered, this would be a good time to write them directly in the chat. Maybe we could do a couple there. And then also, so how do we, I'm gonna turn it over to Julie to also call on live on people to unmute. I don't know if we have the settings set up for that.
Let's see if is anyone else, any other presenters seeing anything in the chat that didn't get answered? I know a lot of questions were flowing in the chat.
Julie, there was an interesting question about how, in terms of timing, to integrate PAIRR into a class, and I gave it a go, but I thought maybe you or someone else would want to respond or just think about that.
Maybe Marta or Lisa, timing?
Yeah.
What was the question?
So just about how to integrate PAIRR into your class. I mean, I think, sorry, Carl, you said this in the chat, right? Do you want to say it again, or?
Sure, or yeah, but the quick answer in the chat, which I think other people could amplify, was readings earlier in the quarter or the semester with the students, discussion, and then depending on if you're having them use it on all major assignments or just like one focal assignment, you go through the drafting process with whatever your assignment is, then you have them engage in peer feedback. We recommend peer feedback and then AI feedback, and then compare those and then write the final version and reflect on it. And then the question is, depending on how many major assignments you have, whether you do it with more or whether you're just doing it with one. We really leave that up to instructors because it's sort of a thin model of what you're adding to your class, not requiring you to focus on writing with AI, but trying to integrate it in composition courses, in writing in the disciplines courses, and even we've done in the experiment with some large lecture classes in the sciences that included a significant amount of writing. So we try to have a relatively thin amount of material in terms of the amount of focus that's required.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that this model can be used in classes where writing is a component, but neither writing nor AI is a major component. So we have a really we're working on the very streamlined version, but then again, it can also be expanded. Mara, do you want to add anything else?
No, I think it's important to make it workable for you and your students. I think, the more you can make a little bit of space for discussing the readings and having them reflect on that, having that open discussion early on, the better the impact will be down the line. So I think it's worth making a little bit of space, but most people don't want to let, teaching AI literacy take over their classes. So I think you just have to find a balance and, you can start small. You could have a 10-minute discussion in like one class and like have them develop their own AI policy and then use it with one assignment and just see how it goes. And if you're like, oh, we need to do this more, it's fantastic. Or if you're like, that was enough, just try it and see. Because we're still at an experimental phase,
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not seeing any hands raised on the Zoom. I'm inclined, if you have a question, if you'd like to raise something for discussion, you could just unmute and ask it.
I noticed there was a question about linguistic justice and that maybe Julie could talk a little bit more about.
Is that in the Q&A?
Yeah, the person just said, can you shed more light on linguistic justice aspects that you discussed with your students?
We're in the Q&A, or that's all it says?
It's in the Q&A and I responded, so it looks like it's answered. Yeah, that's all it says.
Is that person still here? Do you want to?
I think it's useful to answer anyway.
Okay, sure. Can you shed more light on what you discuss? Is that the question?
So let me be more specific. I wanted to know the aspects that you discussed with your students when you were talking about linguistic justice. So since it is such a broad and deep topic, like what angles did you enter from?
Okay, beautiful.
And then,
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. So absolutely, right? Like it's a whole. So it's do you say your name? Zenar, or how do you say your name?
Yeah, Zenar.
Zenar. So if you're not familiar, like I think one thing that Zenar is getting at is that it's a broader topic beyond education, right? So like language preservation or voting materials and what language they're in, right? Many things that go beyond education, but we're focused really just on linguistic justice and equity in education, and specifically around related to writing of all kinds, right? Like essay writing or any kind of writing, a discussion post in an online class, and the kind of privileging dominant language adherence as opposed to the ideas that students have, right? As opposed to their expression that uses multiple Englishes or more than one language or register shifting, and really looking at how to celebrate and elevate that aspect of student writing and student ideas is the focus. And so talking to students is really about that, is about linguistic bias, primarily in academia, and a little bit about in the readings. And feel free to stay unmuted, Zena. I'm really curious about if you talk to students about this, but also in the videos, like a little bit about where this comes from, kind of making the case that there is no like one standard perfect English, that doesn't really exist, and thinking about how who linguistic correction gets applied to, who it doesn't get applied to, bringing some awareness of this to students. What about you? Is this something that you work with students on, or?
Yeah, I'm diving deep into this area because English is second language for me. And sometimes when I write, I feel like my language is more emotive than pure academic, the way it's written. And I don't think it's a monolithic term in any way, but I feel like when I ask ChatGPT or any other chatbot to, take this write up and then critique it, the way it writes and the way I write very different. And perhaps my experiences and my background are shaping my way of framing language. And it's not only these bots. Bots are just like exacerbating the problem. I think the problem is how we elevate some voices and shut down others. So just wanted to bring that perspective.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I would be really curious if you tried your own writing with our prompts, and if you're seeing any issues, we would love to hear from you and kind of see modifications that you make to the prompt so that so you can get feedback that celebrates your voice and gives you the kind of critique that you would, like closer to it. I don't know if AI really can give the kind of feedback that we maybe give each other.
Yeah, I would love to try after this call and see
Yeah.
how it responds. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if you can post on the Padlet, I would actually please. I'd really be very curious. And
Sure.
if it's close, and what you're seeing that you maybe don't, what you're seeing that you like.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Such a great question.
Any last questions? Anyone want to unmute, or you can put something in the chat, or you can stay anonymous before we close? We've got another couple minutes if you want.
Thanks for everyone's great involvement.
Thank you, Anna, for setting this up. It was
Thank
fantastic.
you, Anna.
Thanks to everyone who's here, and thanks for all the positive vibes in the chat. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Get some summer sun, maybe. And we hope to hear from you further online. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording.